because we can just announce. So I believe we have 2 more weekends left of your show, Jane. So people have 2 more weekends to come and see the show at East Lubbock Art House. It's really good. It's amazing. So if you haven't seen it yet, even if you have seen it, some people have gone back and come and seen it twice. So that's not a problem. But I guess we can go ahead and get started. So, all right, Jane, if you'd like to tell everyone a little bit about yourself, just about how you found out a little bit about East Lubbock Art House and some about your work too.
Okay, well, hi everybody. And I actually found out about East Lubbock Art House on Facebook. As a matter of fact, I started looking at it on Facebook. So, and then there was an event that I can't even remember which one it was, but anyway, then I came and saw you because I had this work and I was being kind of persnickety about where I wanted to put it. But I'd also agreed that I would show it in Lubbock before I showed it anywhere else. So I sort of was in this conflict, and then here came this gallery, and it did what I wanted to do, which was give anybody access to the work. And so, and that meant the people that I worked with in this work and anybody else, so because if you don't have transportation and you live on the east side and you're in this exhibition, then it's accessible. And that's kind of how, or if you do have transportation, you can drive over to it. So is that kind of one of the reasons I wanted to put it there. And it has a lot to do with what's going on in our legal system, which I think is very relevant to what's happening in East Lubbock. So if you want, do you want me to talk to you in pictures so that we can is that all right?
Yeah, that'll be perfect.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share, but I'm going to go right up to the beginning here. Not at this spot. And so let me just escape out of here real quick because I want to, oops. Okay. Oh yeah, there we go. All right, so I was good. All right, are we still sharing? No, we're not sharing.
I'll
share again.
I don't see it, but we're still here.
Here it comes. That was me. All right. And all right, here we go. And I wanted to work off a slideshow because I was just doing this. I wanted to work off this slideshow because I thought it would give me the opportunity. While that's doing that, I'm going to come back. I don't really want to talk to you about that. I thought it would give me the opportunity to sort of follow along an organized path, but also get the message across about the work because it has some complex ideas to it. And so I really want to make sure that I can speak in my first language, which is through images. And so hopefully this is now working. Okay, here we go. So it is working. Let's go back to the share. Sorry, everybody. Bear with me. This is a dyslexic. I can speak in my first language, which is through. Okay, we ready? So this work is called Injustice for All. And I actually was born and raised in Post Texas in Melissa, Texas, which is, of course, all of y'all know I still live in Post. This is my brother and I in 1962. And so I started making art at that time. And because I had a communication disorder, autism and dyslexia, so one of the ways I would express myself is through art. And I always say that I've always made art. I can't remember a time that I didn't make art, even when I was drawing in the sand. And so I started making pictures early too, because it gave me a way to communicate. And so that's why that's me when I was 4. And in that time I was a handful, I'm going to tell you that. And my mother left me with a lady all the time, with people that worked for my family, not just one person, but I was particularly close to a lady that worked for my family. Her name was Martha, and she really loved me a lot, and I really loved her. So from 0 to 6 years old, I had Martha. But what happened with Martha is when I was 6 years old, and these are little lessons in whiteness that I want to talk about in this word, is that I noticed that there was a big difference in being white and being black. So I said to Martha, it must be hard to be black. And I still remember, and I got in trouble for that. My mother heard that. And so my Aunt Millie actually heard that. And so that ended up being the end of my relationship with Martha. And I never saw her again, actually. So that stopped, and I didn't get to, that was person, a major caretaker in my life. So that was actually my first experience with the pain of racism. And so then happened later down the line, as I got older, let me go back a little bit. I realized one day I was at my parents' house in Justisburg, they farm and ranch out there. And my mother was so excited. She had a flagpole up in front of the house, and they raised the flags, and one flag was a United States flag and the other flag was a Confederate flag. And there I was coming visiting from Denver. I had kids by then. I lived in Colorado. And my children, for the first time, were seeing things that we had never, ever left them. Their father was actually from Brazil. So they, so it was so there started the separation. And I think that is important to talk about because it started the separation with my family, the estrangement, because our values were different. And the reason that happened was because there was a person who I loved. That was the first loss with Martha. I know that fueled from the beginning my feelings about this racism business. So on I went, and things happened, life happened. And then one of my kids was a victim of a major crime in Lubbock. And she was 14 years old. She was walking to school and she was abducted, and horrible, horrible things happened. So in that time, we had to go through a trial, all this horrible stuff. And what I learned in there is that in my art practice, and why this story is important, is it's another piece of my life that fuels my work and justice for all. But it also, and during that time, I started using photo as a serious way of dealing with what I would say photo made my brain stop screaming. Because after that happened, I would literally be walking around my house and I would be crying my eyes out and wouldn't even know it. I mean, it was just so intense and so horrible and so scary. And so all of those things that photo as a function very well. So I started making these pictures. And during that time, I was also a counselor, and a person came to see me. Her name was Alma. This is way back in 2007. So it was that happened in 2001. So this is 6 years later. I've been making pictures all this time, and she comes to see me, and she's crying in my office, and she's talking about her cousin who's fixing to get executed. So there was nothing I needed to do to help her. It's just that the governor was in Lubbock that day. He was talking at the convention center. So I told her, why don't we get in the car? I'll take my camera and we'll go up and you can give this letter that she had this letter. She wanted to give it to the governor, begging him to spare her cousin. So we got in the car. I took my camera. We went up there. She gave some guy the letter. They completely ignored her and treated her terrible, or just indifferent. Terrible is indifferent. Indifferent is terrible. And that's how they treated her. So we came back and I started making pictures of her. So then the next year, she still coming to see me. She ended up having to take care of her niece and nephew. They came to her. Their mother died of alcoholism. And so this is the first pictures I took of them when they were 5. And I've actually followed them all along. This is Jose and Josefina. And so I started following these people and their justice piece, because these were the victims of capital punishment. And so one of the things I learned in this whole project, because this project went on for 4 years, is that there's not justice for someone whose loved one commits a crime. There's nothing. Like these kids, they don't have counseling. They don't have crime victims compensation. Nobody cares. what happened to them. In fact, people think they deserve it. And so that carries over. And that really inspired and influenced my work and the way I see the legal system, because it was a very unpleasant experience for us too as victims. So I had like 3 opportunities to work in the legal system, as in probation, on the defense side, and then as a victim of a crime. So this is the first, their son spent 22 years on death row and he was innocent. And so here's a picture right after his conviction was overturned, and boom, here comes the next, I thought, so yeah, 6, 7 months later, and I go back and here's another picture, he's out. He was living on death row in Oklahoma in a cell underground for 22 years on a crime he did not commit. So here came another interesting piece of all this, is that this was his grandkid. He never met, he went to death row when his son was 6 and he came out when his granddaughter was 6. And so that is to me an amazing perspective of what's happening to people in the legal system. So there we go to influence my work. And now for question 2, if that answers it. You want me to stop sharing and come back?
No, you're good. This is so cool to share all of the work too and all of these photos. But yeah, if you'd like to kind of talk about how Injustice for All kind of got started, maybe about how the title for the show came about, and just how you kind of worked through all of the work.
Okay. So when 4 years ago, I actually started working for the Private Defender's Office, which in Lubbock is actually the Public Defenders. The difference is that it's a nonprofit funded by the county. So it's structured a little different, but it still serves the same purpose as a public defender's office. So what was interesting is when I did my interview there, one of the people that I photographed, that last, let me go back really fast, this kid right here. I photographed this kid in 2009. The guy that I interviewed with was their attorney. It was just a fluke. So that's how that project got me access. It started out good. When I did my interview, he knew my work and he said maybe I could make work. So, but the thing is that making work about these issues are so sensitive that it's not about just going out and making a picture. It's about establishing a relationship. I never used a camera for a year. I worked there, and anybody that I photographed in my own ethic had to be competent. So if they weren't competent, then we had to wait till they were competent so that they could consent and collaborate with me. Mm-hmm. And my photographs of people that I work with are collaborations. And my relationship, it's not just based on being a caseworker or being there. I want to say it's more intimate in the sense that I have an understanding about the way a lot of the people that I work with think, because they have some of the same issues I have, but they didn't have the same opportunities that I got. And that's why they're in their situation and I'm in my situation. And so there's this idea, there's a language that's common, so we can develop, even though there's a difference, there's also a language that's common, and that's visual language. So I wanted to use, so I started making these pictures, and it was amazing how they started intersecting into other pictures that I had made prior, like this guy right here. I'll come back to it, but he literally, I photographed his brother. This was 2018. I photographed his brother in 2002. And his brother, I didn't even know they were related. His brother was shot by the Tahoka police in 2012. I think it's 2012, because he was in a psychotic, meth-induced psychosis. He literally had a steak knife in his hand, and the police shot him right in front of his kids and family. So, and I didn't even, and what was amazing is that this guy came to me, our paths intersected, and I was able to give him a photograph and then photograph him. So it was of his brother, because he was in prison when his brother was shot and he didn't get to see the funeral. So these intersections have happened in this work. And these are all, like I said, these are all people. See this girl, remember her in the rattlesnake pants? Guess what? She came to me through the Public Defender's Office in 2018. She was 21 years old. So there I had her when she was 12 for one reason, and then I had her again. So these amazing connections. So a lot of these people I was already connected to, you know, in some way. So it was with this guy, I knew him for a long time before I photographed him. He was one person that was in jail for longer than the maximum penalty for his crime because of competency. And so the reason I wanted to use daguerreotypes, and I'll get into that, I'll just kind of go through these. I don't want to lose time or anything, but all of these people were people that I made a connection with visually through visual thinking. And that's what made me select them as people I wanted to use in the work. Everybody, I photographed a lot of people that were up for photographs, but if there wasn't that connection of intuitive collaboration going on, sort of a visual conversation, I didn't want to use the image because I thought of this work as a collaboration of telling a story, her story, their story, the story they have in common, the story about what's going on. So another guy just was, I'll worry about that guy. So he was he's the first person I photographed in this project. And he's just a good guy. And he was about to go see his mom, and that's why he was so happy. So here we go. So that now takes me to, do you want me to talk about the next question, Danielle? Is that good?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. The next thing that we were talking about was in the questions, I think, was about, you know, why am I thinking about this work? Not just by the way I'm talking about what's happening in front of me, but what is the problem? Why is this happening, right? How is the idea of mental illness, how is this happening? How are people with mental illness dying in jail? So the people that I looked to in my research, and I have another article I'll share at the end if anybody wants to read it, are these people that have experienced, like Angela Davis and Craig Haney. And what they're saying is, you know, what we're putting people with mental illness in holes. We're doing what we did in 1841, you know, and leaving them there. And it's like you're saying, it's the most ill-suited place on the face of the earth to leave a person with mental illness. And we are literally putting them in there and making them and calling them incompetent, which they are at that time, and leaving them for months and months and sometimes years. And that's how people die. So these are things that if we don't address them, it's like Philip Zimbardo said. He said, evil is knowing better and willingly doing worse. So if we don't have a conversation about what's going on in our legal system, then we're pretty bad. So that's why I'm telling these stories. So the daguerreotype, let me go why before I'll talk about this and then I'll go on to why the daguerreotype. But so these are places where something terrible happened. And I wanted to, they're a lament, a song of grief. Okay, so it's sort of, I'm thinking about a stricken song of grief because this person, I knew him. I knew him for 3 years. And I knew how sick he was. And I knew his access to care was limited. I knew a lot of things about him. And then he's gone. All because he was in a isolation cell that we saw in the installation, and we'll see in a second, for months without any kind of mental health treatment, and killed himself. So these images of landscapes are places where something really terrible happened. And I'm just, again, talking about a song of grief here. So this is baby Alex in Post, just down the street from my cousin and I. Happened, her mother, again, another meth-induced psychosis. But there was a CPS involvement. So she'd only, you know, that had been going on for a bit. And this one's the Tahoka case that I was telling you guys about. He's also in the gallery in the silver gelatin print. So if in the front room, if you guys get over there. And then this one's and the only daguerreotype I've ever made that was a composite, a digital composite, and you can literally see the dot pattern in the print. See it right here? I mean, that's how sensitive these daguerreotypes, so you can see it going up there. So it's little, see right there? That's all the dot pattern in the print. That's how much the daguerreotype will soak up the information, because that's one of the amazing things about it. But I wanted to composite this print, and it had to be digital because we had the the experience of this guy who was psychotic. It was the saddest story in the whole world. And had he been treated correctly in the mental health system, this would not have happened. And this right here, this door is pointing to the culprits. The ones responsible is the mental health authority. This is the blood on the door from the kid, from where he wiped this child's blood all over the door and then went out in the street. So that composite I thought was really important to as the means of talking about why this stuff is going on and why people, the access to care and systemic racism is really behind all of this. So then going through, let me just go ahead and go here. I told Danielle I'm going to just move here real quick so I can talk about the daguerreotype, and then I'll move to the installations. So this is a guy named Luis Daguerre. So if you click that link, which I'm not going to, it'll take you to Wikipedia, but I happen to do so much daguerreotypes, I know something about him. And so he was a French guy, and he made this method in 1839. So, but the thing about him, and you can look at this daguerreotype, and it's a small one, so it's a little pixelated, but you can see this really beautiful detail on it, right? And so the amazing thing about a daguerreotype, I'm going to show you a contemporary one too, and then mine, is that they're so unforgiving and fragile. They literally are powder living on a plate. So and the way that happens is, here's, let me get to, whoops, here's Ben's. This is a contemporary daguerreotype made the same way, but in a much safer environment. So what happens, this is my mentor. He's the one that taught me the method, the daguerreotypes, and he's who I love to make them with, because he's a real expert in it and has been making them for 20 years. So, and he also makes human rights work. This is a child, one of the Cambodian victims of the genocide in Cambodia, where they have the little mug shots with the numbers. So we both work in similar, actually similarly, and we related. He was one of my professors, but we related so well that he would take on one student to teach, and it happened to me this time, and I think it was because of our connection. It was just really autism, and he was an immigrant from Vietnam, and he immigrated out in the war, during the war. So we just had communication things, that we another visual relationship, right? So anyway, he taught me daguerreotypes, and the way you make them is on a copper plate. You take a copper plate, it has to be shined to the mirror finish, perfect. Like I told you, those little dots, the copper plate, if you had a dot, a tiny scratch on it, it would show once you did a silver plate. So you get a copper, you shine it to death, then you place it in a silver bath, and the silver, and with two little electronic things going on there. I know how to do it, but I couldn't tell you what it is. I'm visual. So you click, this is like if your car battery, the same kind of jump cable goes on this solution and the daguerreotype, and it throws the silver onto the plate. So the silver sticks to it, and then you have a silver plated. And then you go ahead and put it in a fuming box, which I was going to put one on here, but I know y'all don't need to know all that detail. And iodine goes on there, sticks to the plate, and then you put it in another fuming box, and bromide will stick to the plate. Then you expose the plate, whether you expose it in a camera, a view camera, or you can expose it like a contact print, kind of like we did the cyanotypes, but not anything on top. You would use an enlarger. But then once you do that, you put the plate in a mercury. You're burning mercury, which is the dangerous part because you're making it smoke, and it's in a hood. So you set the plate in this, and bromide's not exactly friendly, but you set it in there, and that mercury lands on the plate, and it makes the image happen. So there's just this amazing mercury, and that's where you get the amazing detail going on with this image. And then you've got, it's the same way they make mirrors in a lot of ways. So then you've got this mirror that you're looking in, and that brings me to the daguerreotype, and why it was important is because it literally will implicate the viewer. You will see yourself in the image, and then you can look another way and see the image. So that was the whole point of for me using it. Now let's go to the question about the installations. Was that, what was that question?
Yeah, let me pull it up real quick. But yeah, I'd like to talk about the installations, especially how the wooden one is made and what it is, and especially in this one too. If you'd like to talk about like the sizing of it and just how how the install went as well too.
You know how that install. Okay, so these are actually, I'm going to say these are my newest two pieces of work. So these are 2021 work, and I'm really in love with this work because it has the most amazing kind of transformative process that went on before I even put it up, which was that it started out one way and under one conceptual idea, and then it would be a complete different conceptual idea. And the way that happened was that I was making this mugshot piece, this one, and I was literally dragging these mugshots into a canvas that was 33 by 34 inches on Photoshop, and each mugshot was an inch. And as it went and they were getting more, the color disparities were just slapping me in the face, and my kind of brain can't let go of a pattern, and a pattern started happening. And so the more I put on there, I started even being able to tell which jailer made the mugshot, because you could see it in the background by the way that they worked the camera. So then at the same time I was doing that, I had just finished a book study that I was really moved by, which was the How to Be an Anti-Racist book. And it was talking all about systemic racism. And when I was making this piece, I was just so moved by how what I learned in that book was such a factor in pulling those mugshots are coming alphabetically off the jail roster, and just how the racial disparity was just overwhelming. And so I started thinking about the policy, because I was working on the 42B piece, which is the mental health policy. And I started thinking about who, what they were talking about in the book is that what he says is that racism, because it's systemic, we're raised in it. So you could have the best intention in the world, but if you're lost in systemic policy, racist policy, then you're going to create racist policy. That's basically what I learned in that book, is that the only way to address, to not be a racist, is to be an anti-racist. You can't say, it doesn't work to say, I'm not a racist. Because if you're all white and you're writing policy that's spec'd all brown, then, no matter what you say, that's racist policy, because it's visual, we can see it. And so that is why I had this second piece. And I wanted to look at who was writing the policy, who was approving the policy, and who was implementing the policy. And I wanted to see what the race was. And then it became a diptych. And now you see these sculptures in these big wooden pieces. And the reason they're like that is because I was thinking about the attorney visitation room where I would go to visit people for 4 years. And they're a little tiny room, there's a big window, and there's a little paper push, which is that little slit you see on these brown pieces right here. And I used to put my head on the desk right here, which was metal in that room, and look through that slit to make a connection with the person I was talking to, so I could try to figure out how to get them out of there. And sense who they were as a person and what our options were, because that glass was just such a barrier, So that's why this, and then there was 2 little stools that you sit on, and when the pandemic was going on, I'm not gonna lie, I mean, they used to laugh at me, those guys. They'd be on the other side of the window and I'd be in there with spray, like spraying Lysol and wiping everything down. I was so scared of catching COVID and giving it to somebody, you know, that it was just terrible. So anyway, this piece was, I was thinking about all of that, and that's why it looks the way it is and it's sculpted the way it is. And, you know, and it also is, of course, influenced by the whole idea of Jim Crow and how we can see that by looking at private prisons and also prisons and our jails. And so then came, here it is close up in these, and you can probably see where I'm talking about these backgrounds in the mugshots, see here, here, and here, and then you'll see these real light ones in here. So that's the kind of, and then here coming down, and actually when Danielle and I did this, Danielle was up there writing and I was calling out, remember Danielle? These
Yes.
pieces are not easy. Okay, like these took time. These took 3 days. No, so, but they
Maybe
were,
want to cry though. I don't know.
we're gonna laugh about that, you know, like 5 years from now. We're laughing about it now, and that's good. But when we were doing it, it was tough, wasn't it? Because it was time consuming and complicated. And so, but when she was writing these, and even before, when I was looking at it on the Photoshop piece, I was struck by it, how it looked like chromosomes, you know, and just like how those marks, and they just sort of conceptually just wrapped around this piece. And so I just really love it. And it was a lot of work. So pieces that are a lot of work like that, I think end up being hopefully powerful and speaking to the idea of, and you know, what's going on. And you know, the important part about this piece is that it's not a piece about people, it's a piece about policy and people that are affected. It's a piece about mass, basically. And what, you know, like these guys over here, this little group of guys, it's not about saying you're bad racist. It's about talking about how racist policy happens and how it's implemented, because there's not equal representation. That's the problem. So you're getting people that are socialized and ingrained in racism their entire life, which is kind of why I went earlier, I told those stories, is to talk about, you know, the whiteness of our world and how we need to really start thinking about, or personally, my journey of being an anti-racist is that I have to own all of my stuff as I go. So then I'm open for new ways of thinking. And that's how this piece was inspired. So, and then we have, and there's that gem piece. So this piece is called 42B. And that's actually the name of the mental health code. And so the reason I made that, you see 540 bottle caps, and these are tin tops placed in a bottle cap and then cast in resin. And those babies are hand cut too with a punch. So I have surgery from that. And so these pieces are talking about how in 6 months, 540 cases will go through the public defender's office of people with a mental illness. 540 cases of mental illness will be thrown in jail, and some of them will stay there for a very long time, lost in competency, a lot of them. And then when they get out, they will have 0 left. They will not have their Social Security, they will not have their health insurance, they will not have their apartment, they will have nothing. And so that's what this piece is talking about. Again, another piece about mass. And one of the things that, or I'll talk about where I'm headed with my work in just a second, but then this is the last installation. And this one was Danielle and I, this one wasn't easy to install either, was it, Danielle? I mean, I think installing a show like this, I already know because I've installed part of it. I hadn't ever used any of those other pieces, but it's complicated and it's time consuming, but you just get tired, don't you? Because it's so like, you know, but
Yeah.
you know, it just, you know, we committed to it, but it couldn't have been done without all 3 of us and the other people that came and painted. So many people helped install it. And I mean, that is all about community. I kind of think that fits with it conceptually too, because it was all of us coming together and making something beautiful. And I think that really happened with the installation. But truly believe that's part of the process of this show, you know, that it's all about a social practice, and which was why this is the absolute best space for it. So this piece right here, we wanted to make it 70 square feet, which was the same size as a solitary cell in the jail. And they call it the secure housing unit, but it basically means you're going to be in solitary for 23 hours a day. So we wanted to give people the idea of what it felt like to be in a space that's 70 square feet. So that's kind of where we were coming from on that. And we also wanted the glass. These prints are, again, etched on plexi for the same reason as the other, because that's what there is. I'm simply communicating about the things that I witnessed and saw and had to process, because there's a lot of pretty ugly stuff that goes on. And my work is a way to think about it and get it out and give it a safe space. See, that's the great thing about a piece of art, is that it's got this space, you know, and all the feeling and emotion and passion and all the things that exist in an artist can live in that space safely. It's like a boundary that contains so much energy of and feel, for me anyway, of what I'm thinking about and how I feel about stuff. So that's why I like to do it. And that might be the last. What was the last? Oh, where am I going? Was that the last question?
Yeah. So where do you see your art practice going, especially after this show? And what work are you working on now?
Well, where I want to see this, I want this show to travel. So I actually, it sounds crazy, but I've started already applying for grants that are going to be working in research groups that are working in ending racism, like anti-racist theory and policy. So there are grants that I'm looking into that need artists. You know, I'm really interested in this work, move in that direction. But I'll also send it out in the regular, you know, paths to, or, you know, answer calls, put it that way, you know, for shows. So I'll hope to do that. But I want to, what's stemming from this work and where I'm going with it in terms of this exact work is that I am applying for grants also to write. I want to write a program, a holistic program for competency restoration and document it. So that's kind of where I see my vision, I see myself trying to accomplish, is that creating a program and then making a documentary so that people can see it can work and that people don't have to hang themselves in jail. There's another way. And that's what I'm going to start working on. Well, I'm already actually working on. And then the next, the other thing I'm doing, that's, I always like to have a little project on the side that's kind of experimental. You know, we did those cyanotypes, Danielle, yesterday. Well, you weren't the only one. So they thought, oh, you know what, I might try this because we were getting them out again. So one of the things I'm really interested in is blueprint maps. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm looking for these blueprint maps around places where some of my social justice portraits are. And I'm going to actually cyanotype a portrait on the blueprint map where the, that's what I'm thinking about. You know, we'll just see, like, it's sort of mulling around in my head. So I love those projects where you just sort of, you know, figure things out. It's like the ones that people might not see, but they're like so much fun, you know, that, and so who knows where that'll go. And so that's kind of, I'm working in East Lubbock a lot with my social work stuff too. So I'll still be around doing the thing.
The cyanotype workshop was really fun. I'm actually like I went and bought some already already has a chemical on it, cyanotype paper today because I was excited. But yeah, if you want to tell people about the workshop too and how it went yesterday.
I thought we had the best time ever. I mean, it passed like that, didn't it? So what we did is we just took a bunch of cyanotype paper. I mean, that's a really nice thing. Cyanotypes are just, they're another old process invented by Anna Aikens. And well, there are people that argue about there because there was an astrologer before her, and I forget his name. I like to think about her doing it. But people would argue about that historically. Anyway, she wanted to record her plants. She was a botanist, and she came up with it. And it's what I would call sun prints. But and I don't even have one in here that we did. But I took 50 sheets of paper, and we had a bunch of junk, and the kids made photograms, and we had a lot of transparencies. I love the ones that were drawing on the transparencies. That were there were kids drawing on transparencies and making their pieces.
Yep.
And got really interesting is how the parents got really into it. Then they started doing their own, like, and then they were like kept in line to watch their brain.
I know the parents were fighting. I know you didn't even know out there. They were fighting over different objects.
Yeah, I thought it was one of the best times ever. Like I thought it went really well. The kids just seemed to have such a great time, and everybody was just working together. It was pretty exciting.
Yeah, I have my print.
Oh, there
So
it is. There it is. Oh, that's great. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and we were excited when it turned out too. Remember all that? So, I mean, that's how I feel too about everything that any kind of print that I make. When I see it pop up, it's just magic, and so that's what I thought some of the kids. Remember, they would spray it with the hydrogen. I'd be like, "Wait for the magic part!" They spray, and that would actually darken it up quite a bit. Yeah,
It was good though. It was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope we'll do it again because I think it's really good for people to come together and build art. I really would love to do a
Yeah, and I got some questions. Oh, sorry.
Sure.
I got some questions last night from people about like what were cyanotypes and just what was the process. So I think having that for more community members, because it's really fun, but a lot of people don't know about it. So it's kind of it's almost a lost art.
Yeah, and it's actually so accessible too. I mean, it's you need a dark room, but not a dark room. You just need to turn the lights off. It's not, I mean, to coat paper, that gets more complicated, but it's not expensive too expensive to get it. And so, I mean, and I usually make a whole bunch at once, but no matter where you are, you can make a cyanotype. That's the bottom line. And that's cool. If you could take them for vacation, like your kids raising heck, you say, hey, let's make a cyanotype, at the hotel or wherever you're staying, things like that. That's what my friend did with her grandkids. She took them camping and they made cyanotypes. So yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, it's perfect for camping, I think. Let's just pull it out.
Just the water part is the only issue. So, but if you got water like they did, because they had a cabin, then you're, really, or I'm a camper person. Like if there's a way to rent a cabin and camping, I'm like right there in line saying, that's the best kind of camping when there's a roof and water. So, but anyway,
No, that's the easiest one.
I think
Cool. And then also, if you could describe your art practice in 3 words, what would it be?
oh, well, I had that up there. It was empathy. Let me just check again what that was. Yeah, let's see. I had it. It's empathy, justice, and
Yeah.
Or empath. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Is that kind of sort of
Yeah.
my process, which is first do no harm, and that is that's the number one rule. And I actually teach my students that too, because I teach art and activism. And when we're talking about projects, then the number one rule is first do no harm. And if it even looks like they're headed that way, then they have to justify how that project does no harm, and how they're implicated. Because usually if you're implicated in some way, then it's less likely that spectating goes on. It's much more intimate.
Perfect. And then we had a few comments from Facebook. So we had one from Gregory Sale.
Huh?
Gregory Sale, I'm assuming you know.
I
So
do
he
know.
said the authenticity of your relationships with your collaborators slash
Slash, oh, you froze. Yeah,
Um,
missed
it
that
always
comment.
does it always does that. Okay, let me read the comment again. Like I guess it's if that doesn't happen where it dips out, then something else bad will happen. But Greg said the authenticity of your relationships with your collaborators and photo subjects sings through these images. So wonderful to see this new work.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks, Gregory. Yeah, Gregory actually does a lot of work in justice too. I mean, in fact, he's had an Andy Warhol grant, so he's actually one of my mentors too. As far as concept and working in justice, we worked together on a project, or I worked in his project. That was his project, but I was a grad student then and got the opportunity to work with him with the ASU Art Museum, and it was all about the sheriff Joe Arpaio and the kind of atrocities that were going on there. And he made a really beautiful, one of the best parts of it was this dance that were the moms in jail. There were mothers in jail and they had a dance lesson with their daughters, you know, that there was this beautiful exchange.
Mhm.
It was a social practice. Gregory's a social practice artist. But anyway, so it's a real compliment to hear him say that because yeah, he's one of my people that, and when I was in grad school, helped me along my way.
Yes. So then to also go back to the visitation tables, and you were inspired by the book. So are you reading anything new right now or anything interesting?
Well, I'm not, yes, as a matter of fact, it's an article though. I just read it. It was very interesting. And it was written by, okay, I don't even mean to get to turn into an academic here, but I'm so interested in this issue. And it was, actually had it up in case you did ask me that question. Let me just tell you the name of it real quick. It's right here. It's called Caging the Incompetent: Why Jail-Based Competency Restoration Programs Violate the Americans with Disability Act. So it's about a case actually, and I am using that to educate myself about ways that I can start to think about that other piece I was talking about, creating the competency restoration program. So, you know, I'm starting the research on that, and that's one of the things I'm reading. It's hard to read that stuff, but I'm so interested in it. It's kind of like reading photography books. I'll read stuff that, you know, is interesting to people, weirdos like me. Yeah.
I know. I love just reading books about art. It's kind of
I know. And,
articles about art.
well, and artists, you know, and about how their life and what they did. And, you know, like I was talking about, or talking to a friend about, there's an artist named Betty Hahn. She's 80 something years old. She was one of the first woman professor at RIT. And we were in a show together, a justice show together in Carmel, and we became friends. This is several years ago. But oh my gosh, you know, seeing, because she was 80, so this enormous body of work. And literally, I went to visit her. She lives in Albuquerque. So, and we live here, so it's just a short drive. So I went to visit her for the weekend once. And I go in her house for the first time. And there's two Andy Warhols on the wall, two originals. I'm like, holy crap. And so, but everybody should be saying that on Facebook, but nobody knows where she lives. Hopefully. Anyway, no, but this is way back in the day, so she probably didn't have room. But what I was going to say is that just her experience, because she got those in the 50s when she was in grad school, when Andy Warhol made them. And so she had this beautiful history of artists that she knew and that she had experienced with. She had Edward Curtis. She had so much amazing knowledge and collection. You know, she was definitely a valid collector, and she just shared with me the whole weekend about, you know, feminism, and about her work is very feministic, and just about being the only woman, and what that was like going through in RIT, and then also in Albuquerque. And then she was really good friends with Ann Nolan, who was another amazing photographer. So I got to hear all kinds of stories about that. And here's another really great thing about her is that she worked with Ansel Adams. I mean, she was one of she dug his prints out of the garbage and he let her have them. So, you know, these stories, what can you do, you know, when you get to see an artist like that, but just soak it all up and enjoy every minute of it, you know, and it's like reading a beautiful book, only you're seeing it and hearing it, you know, and she might be the most amazing person I've ever had the pleasure of hearing, you know, her experience, because it was pretty amazing.
That's
So
really good.
yeah, I'm with you on that, girl. You know, all along the way, you just soak up the art.
I know. Oh, good. And thank you for this. Thank you for doing this and being our first solo art exhibition too. I know
Well,
people were really excited to see the work, so it's great. It's been a lot of people that stopped by and were like, a lot of people knew about daguerreotypes, which is I didn't think a lot of people were going to know what they were, and it's so many were like, oh yeah.
yeah, if they go through the photo program at Tech, even, you know, they're gonna know. But a lot of people have them, you know, because you
Mhm.
can see it in antique stores and stuff. But I think I've been just thought it was the best place ever. And I thought it was exciting for us to be the first because we kind of partnered. I mean, it was this journey and it was kind of cool to be in it, you know, because sometimes when we go through this journey and there's these bumps and great things and problems to resolve and just the journey of an art show. It's the way they all go. I've never seen one that didn't do that. And then it like happens and it's just this really great experience, you know, and then you have the experience of making it happen together, you know, and it's kind of cool for me to know that I'm the first show there, you know, and that, you know, I'm an old lady, so you'll be here long after I'm gone, you know, and you'll know that I'm the first show there.
Like
So
the first show and the last. Look, Jane's first and last show
yeah, I have a heart attack.
at ELOS.
It's like that first and last Injustice show, Injustice for All show. Let's hope not. Keep our fingers crossed. Yeah, but
No,
everybody will go out
but
and
no, it was so good.
yeah.
And it was nice to have it up during the walk too. That was really good. That was a lot of eyes on the work,
That
and
was
people really enjoyed it.
always fun doing that walk, wasn't it? I mean, and I met a lot of people there, and I met these great people from Planned Parenthood, and I
Yeah.
really enjoyed talking to them, you know, and then the health department being there, it was just, that's what I'm talking about, community. That's the kind of experience I really believe in, you know, all the way down to my core, you know, yeah. So, yeah, and then what's coming in the
Yeah, I
future,
never got the Planned Parenthood free stuff.
huh?
I never got the free stuff they were giving out. I never got the free stuff they were giving out. So it's kind of,
They had some
and
good,
once I looked, I went to go get some and they were packed up and gone. So I was like, oh well, I guess
they
I missed out on that.
yeah, they had a lot of free stuff. I bet they'll be back. You know, let's just hope
Yeah,
that
I missed out on the pizzas yesterday. I
you
missed out on all the stuff now. The pizzas that St. Vince's
they
and
had a million of those
St.
things.
Francis provided.
Yeah, those girls, those women were dedicated because that was a Sunday and they were bringing those kids out there. And, you know, I thought that was pretty awesome. And, you know, I appreciate that because that's actually what it takes to start to make a difference. It takes an extra mile over and over and over again, you know, and it's nice when people know that and choose to do it, you know, because
Yeah.
you know, and that, I mean, I loved all those moms though. I got so tickled at some of them, you know, like, but it just made my heart be happy, you know, it was that kind of tickled, you know, but it just made
Yeah.
it a really positive experience, you know, and
No,
they
it
were
was so
happy kids, you know, and they were like, get my print one. I was like, you know, and that little Rodney was so sweet. He was cutest thing. All of them were. And then there was, I think it was it
yeah.
Alea? Was there, she was cute too. She did. And then there's one that did a negative and then she put a frame around it. And it was interesting because with a jewelry frame around it, you know, with some, it was a Mardi Gras necklace, I think. But what was interesting about it
Mhm.
was, I don't know who, if the lady that was talking to her, how she was related, but she told her, no, don't put that there And you could see that this kid is like, no. And then she goes, no, no, wait, do put it there. Do put it there. You know, like she changed and missed him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then this kid, she's let her, and she made this lovely frame. And when she watched it, it was so sweet because the light had, there were tonal ranges in that print. It was just lovely. So her intuition took her the right way, and she made this. It was actually my favorite one because of the tonal ranges. I don't tell the kids that, but it was like I love them all. But you know, just from a photo person perspective, I was like, dang, that kid made a good one. Yeah. So it was really lovely. And then knowing, you know, like just witnessing the whole process that she did was kind of nice. And then the other person,
Those were, yeah, I was telling some of them, I was like, don't you want to do this instead of this? And they're like, no. And I was like, well, okay.
I
And then one
know,
of them, I was supposed to set a timer for it, and I forgot to set the timer. And then they came back to me and were like, is it ready yet? And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And they were like, my print. And I was like, oh, let's go. I was like, I totally forgot it was out there, but I was like,
yeah.
gosh. Yeah, they were kind of
But you know,
good. But yeah, thanks again for, oh, sorry.
oh no, I was gonna say you'd have to leave it out there a long time on some of them that we're making, you know, but still. But yeah, no, it's like I said,
Yeah.
it's been my pleasure to be involved and to be a part of change, you know, and that's kind of what I want to do with the, or when I'm on my deathbed, and I hope that's 20 years from now, by the way, is that, or 30 even, then I will know that I was involved, you know, and that'll be a nice feeling, I hope, you know, but yeah, we hope. But in the meantime, I think I'll just stay in the now and keep going.
I know when we're going through our next pandemic in the next 30 years.
I know.
During the first one, I had an art show at East Suffolk Art House, but hopefully there's not another one within the next 100 years. So
Well,
hopefully.
if you get this one under control, and I really appreciated, the other thing I really appreciated, just on that note before we close, is the mask, you know, wearing the mask, because we're still not where we need to be to not wear a mask, you know, and we want to be where we need to be to not wear a mask. Like, I can't wait till I feel safer going into a restaurant or going doing stuff, you know, like even flying and stuff. It's like, oh, so yeah, we need to just hang on a little longer. And I really appreciate people that want to do that too, because, you know, that's the greater good,
Yeah,
you know, and
most
it
definitely.
was, you know, I'm kind of getting into it. Remember, like I had that strapping one on, it was a little too thick, but I'm like kind of like thinking of them as scarves, you know, so,
Yeah.
or hats or anything else people get into, you know, it's my fashion statement.
Yes. But thank you again for this. And if anybody wants to come see, the show will be open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from 12 to 7. And then the show will also be up from 12 to 7, April 30th, which is the last day. And then we have the first annual art competition coming up. So we'll have 30 artists showcasing work. So it'll be nice to see some other works come in, some artists that people just really don't know, and a lot of younger artists too. So I'm excited for that too. But yeah, we probably will paint the walls again. So not right now, but yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
So,
All right. Everyone have a good night. Thanks for joining in with this, and come see Jane's work. Also, if you have an art gallery or museum, let Jane have a show there too within the next 30 years.